Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive, frankly dramatic paradigm shift happening right now in data center power architecture. For decades, the way we powered these massive, sprawling facilities relied on a very specific, deeply ingrained mental model. But as workloads have intensified, driven largely by these incredibly power-hungry, high-density AI clusters, that old model, it's fracturing. We're seeing a fundamental decentralization of energy storage, and it's changing absolutely everything, from facility design to the actual day-to-day lives of the technicians working on the floor.
So think about this quote for a second. The giant centralized UPS room no longer owns the whole story. That completely shatters the mental model most of us have operated under forever. Historically, you'd build this massive, room-scale, uninterruptible power supply, use it to back up the entire facility, and let the server racks simply consume that heavily protected power. It was centralized, it was familiar, and frankly, it was extremely heavy with procedure. But as we'll see throughout this explainer, that sacred heart of data center resilience is being challenged by something much smaller and way closer to the compute.
Enter the new challenger, the rack-level BBU, or battery backup unit. Instead of relying entirely on some distant room full of giant batteries, operators are literally placing smaller energy buffers directly inside each individual server rack. This is a real game changer for risk management because it forcefully shrinks the failure domain. Instead of a centralized failure that threatens this massive system with countless dependents, the blast radius is bounded down to just one single rack.
Okay, let's dive right into Section 1, the efficiency survival math.
To really understand why hyperscalers are deploying these everywhere, we have to talk about extreme efficiency. Historically, the centralized power conversion chain was just brutal. Power moves from medium voltage AC, steps down to low voltage AC, then it has to be converted to low voltage DC for the centralized UPS batteries. After that, it's converted right back to AC to travel across the data hall, and finally, back to DC inside the server's own power supply. It's a long, zigzagging path. And here's the kicker. Every single time you convert that power, you leak a few percent of that precious energy as heat. And what does all that extra heat require? You guessed it, even more power to run the cooling systems to reject it.
Now contrast that with the distributed setup. Notice how beautifully short this path becomes. With rack-level BBUs, power goes from medium voltage AC to low voltage AC and then straight into a DC ecosystem right there inside the rack. The batteries literally sit right behind the rack power supply unit, meaning the power just stays in DC. Boom, we've completely eliminated all those wasteful round-trip conversions of the old centralized room.
The equation here is brutal but beautiful. Less conversion means less waste. Less waste means less heat. And less heat means a much lower cooling burden. When you're dealing with modern AI racks that are pulling genuinely terrifying amounts of power, shaving off a few percent in conversion loss isn't just a nice little green bonus for a corporate sustainability report. It's absolute infrastructure survival math. In a world where facilities are desperately fighting for every single megawatt, this kind of efficiency, it's completely non-negotiable.
Which brings us to Section 2, the maintenance stream.
You know, efficiency is really only half the story here. Let's talk about the people actually running the building. Because serviceability is arguably the real reason operators and technicians are falling head over heels for distributed systems. When we pit the two models directly against each other, the operational contrast is just staggering. We are trading one facility-wide monolithic beast of a system for hundreds of small, independent systems. And yeah, while that might sound like more work on paper, in reality, it completely changes the entire nature of maintenance and risk. Listen, anyone who has ever maintained a large UPS knows it's an incredibly stressful choreography of risk. You need strict permits, you have to coordinate these complex vendor schedules, you've got to execute super risky bypass planning. The stakes are literally facility-wide. If someone makes one wrong move, the entire data hall could go dark. And from a supply chain perspective, these massive facility-scale components often face long delays, basically turning your most critical infrastructure into a schedule hostage.
And this brilliantly illustrates why distributed BBUs are an absolute dream for maintenance teams. These are self-contained, hot-swappable modules. A basic technician can often just pull and replace them without needing intense factory-level preparation. The failure radius is strictly bounded to that specific rack. Procurement is way faster because you're just buying smaller, repeatable modules. There's just so much less operational theater involved. As one technician from our sources pointed out, if you've done centralized UPS maintenance, you'd choose the BBU option any day of the week. It's the absolute beauty of a problem that stays small.
But hold on, let's pivot to Section 3, the 800V safety shock.
Because shifting all this power capability right into the rack introduces a massive plot twist. As rack densities rise to support these AI workloads, the voltage is rising right along with it, and that brings a stark reality check. I absolutely love this genuine technician reaction from our source material. 800 VDC racks is insane, better be getting hazard pay. It perfectly grounds our abstract whiteboard architectural discussion into the very real, very physical danger of working on the operations floor. We aren't just tucking a couple of AA batteries next to a server here. We are turning the entire rack into a high-voltage environment.
Techs are incredibly used to familiar, emotionally comfortable 48V telecom power. It's a known quantity. But 800 VDC? That is a completely different beast altogether. It's creating an intense culture shock on the floor. A design might look electrically elegant on an engineer's schematic, but if it requires human beings to stand near it, service it, and lock it out safely, it demands absolute, unwavering respect.
So, the crucial point we have to make is this. Hot swappable only feels simple and safe if the engineering and the human training behind it are completely flawless. High voltage DC introduces severe arc risks. It requires super strict safety interlocks, highly advanced personal protective equipment, and operating procedures that are, frankly, idiot-resistant. The human training layer has to rapidly catch up to the hardware because a mistake at 800 volts, it is incredibly unforgiving.
Moving to our final section, number 4. A blurry new boundary.
Because of this intense concentration of power and energy storage, these local batteries are fundamentally changing the actual definition of what a server rack even is. It's no longer just some passive metal cage where compute happens. 5. That is the number of minutes of ride-through a rack-level BBU might typically provide. Now, 5 minutes isn't meant to run a data center through a massive blackout. It's a control surface. Just 5 minutes of local buffering allows a massive AI rack to gracefully hold its load while it confirms a second power source is completely healthy. It allows a facility to stagger load transfers, so an entire row doesn't suddenly jump onto the upstream system all at once, totally avoiding those nasty power system jump scares. The rack is bridging, delaying, and smoothing its own behavior.
But all this new intelligence causes a massive metric headache. Power usage effectiveness, or PUE, is the industry's absolute favorite metric. But PUE calculations get incredibly messy when you start hiding power conversion and backup energy right inside the server rack. Think about it. Where does the facility infrastructure actually end and the IT payload begin? If distributed gear improves the real-world efficiency but makes traditional measurements look completely weird by shifting those losses over into the IT bucket, well, operators are going to need much better ways to describe and measure what is actually happening.
So, ultimately, this is the core takeaway of our explainer today. The rack itself has completely evolved. It is now a power system, a safety system, a telemetry system, and a maintenance workflow, all wearing the shape of IT equipment. The traditional battery room didn't magically vanish. Actually, scratch that. It just got chopped up, multiplied, and moved directly next to the intense heat of the compute.
The old, clean split between building infrastructure and IT payload, it's completely gone. Which leads us with this final, incredibly provocative thought. When the server rack basically becomes its own self-contained, high-voltage power plant, equipped with its own energy storage and load management, who is really in charge? Is it the facility team, or is it the IT team? It's a question every single data center operator is going to have to answer as this power shift accelerates. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the infrastructure around you, and I'll see you next time.